evacuation of remaining rebel fighters and civilians has been halted. The US says it will restrict arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The move comes amid concern over civilian casualties related to airstrikes in Yemen. And the French Senate is expected to approve extending the state of emergency in the country to cover next year's presidential election.
It's 9:01.
KLEK LP Jonesboro, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. It's now time for Community Conversations, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
KLEK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you. Once again, it is December 14th, 2016. You are tuned into Community Conversations. Kato Wonder is in the studio with you, along with my co-host, Mrs. Quabila Harden. And today we have local attorney Scott Willhite. This is our Ask the Attorney segment. So, of course, if you have any questions for Mr. Willhite, the phone number is 870-277-1080. Once again, the phone number is 870-277-1080. We're also live streaming on our Facebook and YouTube pages, and I believe Mrs. Harden has some more terms and other goodies for Mr. Willhite, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Scott, for indulging me in my many questions on terminology and just basic common, I say basic to me, common law questions, things that some people might have, and they might not realize this is an issue until they're in this situation. So we're going to talk about some different terms. Now, one thing that came across my mind first was unwritten laws. Like, there's so many things that we don't know, and then when we get stopped, we go to court, and then we're expected to know a lot of these different things, and it's like, okay, I didn't know that was even a law and ordinance or whatever. So let's talk about some unwritten laws in reference to smaller towns, larger cities, things we were talking about a little bit off air.
Sure, Quabila. I guess generally the concept is this. Each entity, whether it be a city, a county, a state, or our federal government, enacts laws that are written down. They're called statutes.
Okay.
Federal government also has, and sometimes to some extent the state government has regulations that may define certain aspects of those statutes. The federal government certainly has many regulations, and you might think of the Environmental Protection Agency. They promulgate regulations to outline what is environmentally inappropriate. Mm-hmm. But on a more local level, let's just talk about our city ordinances for a minute.
Okay.
We may have city ordinances that control traffic, that control how someone handles animals, how we dispose of trash, things of that sort, just what affects us on a local level. And those are typically written down as in some form as a statute or an ordinance.
Okay.
And beyond that, if we go to a county level, they're a little more detailed.
Okay.
And then we go to state level, they're even more detailed. So they control all activity within the state of Arkansas. Now, what the next level of laws that we typically don't think of are those type of decisions that courts make.
Okay.
So courts decide not only what the statutes mean. For instance, if a statute says we don't want you to go an excessive rate of speed, a court might have to decide, well, what is excessive?
Okay.
If it's not well defined. But beyond that, a court would also decide other issues as far as whether a jury decision in a case was appropriate.
Okay.
And that's more of an unwritten law. It's not actually written down in a statute. It's more of a fluid kind of decision that the judges at the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court make.
Okay. And so the interpretation of some of these is left up to the judge, or?
That's correct. The judge has discretion as to interpreting the laws.
Okay.
Right.
Now, if a citizen decides, okay, that's not right, I just totally do not agree with that, do they have the right to question, I don't want to say the word fight. challenge.
Sure. And there's various levels of that too. For instance, if you go to district court, if you have a traffic ticket or some local matter, say with the city or county, you would go to a district court.
Okay.
Typically, if it's a misdemeanor, and if you get a decision you don't like, you can appeal that. You can file a notice of appeal. You can go to circuit court. That's a county court.
Okay.
That's sort of the next level up. If you don't like that decision, you have a right to appeal again to the Court of Appeals down in Little Rock.
Okay.
And you possibly have another appeal to the Arkansas Supreme Court, but that is a discretionary matter that you file a petition and they decide if they accept it or not. So you can appeal possibly 2 or 3 times.
Okay. Alrighty. So let's talk about some common laws. You probably touched on that a little, talking about the unwritten ordinances, statutes, and let's talk about some common laws, things that I guess we either should know, we may not know. When you hear this term, you hear common law marriage. People think common law marriage. Okay, first let's address that.
Okay.
What is that?
Arkansas does not recognize that legal principle.
Okay.
In Arkansas, we have to have a marriage license, a ceremony confirming a person is married to another person before it's recognized in this state.
Okay.
So marriage is typically considered state by state. All right. In other states, there may be circumstances that are sufficient to create a marriage. For instance, some states may say if you've been living together for a certain period of time, you're considered married. Now that affects not only how you deal with each other now, but when someone passes away, how their property is disposed, how their family is configured, So there's lots of ramifications resulting from whether common law marriage is recognized in a state.
Okay. So, I'm not going to ask you what your advice would be to someone, but have you ever heard of a case where someone, just say Arkansas, they have been together for 20 years, they have umpteen children together, and like you said, one passes away or gets disabled, or they're trying to get insurance, and have you ever heard of a case that has gone to court? One party wants to now claim rights to the other person, say finances of property or things of that nature.
Let me give you a more personal experience.
Okay.
I have a lot of workers' comp cases that I handle currently. I probably got over 100 presently, and one that was very tragic a year or so ago. A lady in that very circumstance had several children with a man. They had lived together for 20 years. He passes away as a result of a tragic work accident, and she is entitled to 0 benefits because she was not legally married to him. Now, his children were, and his grandchildren were, but she was not. So in Arkansas, it's a very bright line test. It's either yes or no. In other states, there may be a different result, but in this state, you have to be
with local attorney Scott Willhite. This is our Ask the Attorney Day. Phone lines are open at 870-277-1080. Once again, the phone number is 870-277-1080. We are also streaming live on our Facebook. Now, you mentioned a term just a few seconds ago, bright line test. Could you define that for us?
Sure. We have some circumstances, Leganzi, that it's clearly going to be either a yes or no question.
Okay.
For instance, if you have a speeding law that says you cannot go beyond 55 miles an hour and you go 56, that's a bright line test. You're exceeding the speed limit. We have other types of situations that apply that require you to act in a reasonable manner.
Okay.
A reasonable manner can be different. It's subjective. Quabila, you may think reasonable is one definition. Leganzi, you may think it's a little different, and I may come up with a third definition. That's a gray area, so that's distinct and separate from a bright line test. It's subjective, it's discretionary, and that's typically what juries do. They determine where that line is drawn.
Okay. Alrighty, so let's get into some more common laws. I was picking Mr. Scott's brain earlier with this practice test, and the question was, what are common laws? And it gives 3 different choices. Laws that evolve slowly over time and are usually part of the existing culture or tradition rather than being enacted by legislator or rulers, or laws that are enacted by legislator or rulers and that apply commonly to everyone, or laws that are commonly found in all kinds of societies.
It would be the first one, Quabila, because those are the laws that develop over time. They're not written down per se. They're not like a statute that you can go to a book and read it.
Okay.
If you want to know a statute that applies to a specific circumstance that a legislature has written, you can go to a book, the Arkansas Code, and you can find it. The common law, typically you have to search through various opinions from judges. And so that's what we do occasionally is, and fortunately we have computer-aided research now that we can get on various websites and look at those decisions and get a list of cases that may be the most recent cases on that common law point.
Okay.
And there may be different opinions. For instance, the Court of Appeals may have said one sort of answer to a question.
Okay.
The Supreme Court may have answered it slightly differently. So sometimes it's not absolutely clear in the common law realm what the answer is, whereas a statute is more of a clear answer to a question.
And so I'm guessing now with that searchable database, there's no longer need to, because I know walk into a lawyer's office back in the day, there would be like a wall full of books. And I'm guessing that you all would have to, attorney would go through these books to look for laws or cases to cite when they're forming arguments for a case. So now, with that being said, now that you can search online, do you kind of see a trend of lawyers not needing to have all of these books, or do they still do it out of tradition, or what?
I think, Legenzi, both. I mean, some of the more seasoned lawyers still like to have that book in their hand, and I do sometimes. I like to look at a statute book and make sure I understand that it's there, it's firm. But the computer-aided research has shortened the work time of every attorney, I believe, because we can, through various sites, look at the latest opinions, the latest statutes, and get those answers much quicker than we used to be able to. And we don't have to have that wall of books, but now you can go to a decorator and they'll probably sell you some of those old books to put in your house to make it look lived in, or.
Okay.
Well, I remember because when I worked at the radio station in Helena, which was owned by the late Judge L.T. Sims, and actually, if you go down to the radio station, because actually Judge Sims had his old law office right next door to the radio station, and there's just walls of law books, and those law books are still there. And this is going back to like the 80s, so I just kind of had a flashback.
It used to be that every year you would get a notice that you have to update those books, and you'd get a bill and some supplemental material. So we don't have to do that any longer.
Okay. So what is the website that people can go to? Or is there any one particular website?
There's several. Westlaw, Lexis, those are two of the primary.
Okay.
And then there's one provided through the Arkansas Bar Association that I use that's more reasonably priced.
Oh, wow. Oh, so you have to pay for access to these websites?
Yes. Usually it's monthly, or I guess you can do it by the search.
And are they limited? Do you have to be a licensed attorney to access them, or if anyone who's willing to subscribe could read them?
I think anyone that subscribes can have access now. Maybe paralegals and assistants do research too. I do most of my own research,
okay.
But primarily lawyers are the ones that use those websites.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about some of the levels of the law. We've touched on it a little bit, the county, city, state, federal, but let's talk about some of the levels of the laws, some things that we were talking about earlier before the show started, and how they are,
applied, maybe?
Yes, or that's not exactly the word I'm thinking of, but let's roll with that. I'm sorry, my brain just kind of lost it for just a moment.
What happens to me all the time?
So you did mention earlier jurisdiction. So let's talk about jurisdiction in reference to county, city, state, federal.
The primary situation that I face that issue of jurisdiction means does the place where you're going to have a decision, a trial, a hearing, have enough contact with that case or that person? For instance, let's say you have someone from out of state driving through Arkansas, and they have an accident in Arkansas, but they live in another state. They get medical treatment in another state. They have no other contact with Arkansas other than they were driving through one day and had an accident. The question is, does Arkansas have enough contact? Should Arkansas decide that case, or should they have their case heard up in, say if they're from New York, should they have their case heard there? We have statutes that are written laws that says where you can file that case.
Okay.
And Arkansas says you can file it where the accident happened,
Okay.
or where the responsible party, called the defendant, had their place of business or resided.
Okay.
Because you want someone to have a fair shake. You want them to have a fair shot at trial. You don't want, say if someone sues you, you don't want to have to go to New York to defend that case where an accident occurred in Arkansas. That's a jurisdictional issue that we face sometimes. Another one is, say in a criminal matter, jurisdiction would be whether a matter is a misdemeanor or a felony.
Okay.
A misdemeanor would be filed in district court. Felony would be in circuit court.
Okay, so misdemeanor district and felony circuit.
Right, and generally, misdemeanors are, you can receive no more than a year in jail. I think $1,000 fine is maximum. So there are various limitations to a misdemeanor. And that, there'll be traffic situations, various city and county ordinances.
Okay. I do have a question, and I know we can't get into, your personal thoughts because you may have handled a case like this before, or, we're not trying to put you in the hot seat under the bus.
I thought you were trying.
But there was a case recently. I don't know all the details. There was different videos posted on Facebook, so I was trying to gather what the full story was about. Long story short, a mother lost her daughter. She was shot and killed, but I'm guessing her boyfriend at the time. He stayed in the house with the body for several days. Okay, they went to court, and this happened over in Tennessee. I say Memphis, but Memphis is so broad. Tennessee. And so the judge gave what do you call them?
The defendant is the one that's charged.
Okay, they gave the defendant basically bail. I don't know if this was the primary hearing. They were just going to court over this issue, but they allowed him bail, which was fairly low, and the family exploded in court. So it's like, okay, I know we've talked about this whole thing about evidence and why things happen, and that we on the outside don't know why they happen, but
what we're dealing with there, Quabila, is a very difficult issue, because if we assume that a person is guilty, at that stage of the proceeding, it's an initial hearing or preliminary hearing, and the only guideline we have at that point is what kind of bail or bond will make sure that that person shows up for their criminal proceedings.
Okay.
We're not supposed to punish them at that stage. Okay. Although, we sort of, sometimes we want to jump to that conclusion that, hey, they're not saying they're not, it's not like they're pleading guilty, but there's all the evidence is against them. Yeah. So what we have to do is remember the Constitution says everybody's presumed innocent. We have to maintain that presumption until either a judge or jury determines their guilt or until they plead guilty. So the only guideline is outlined in the Arkansas criminal procedure rules, which says what kind of bail will ensure that they show up for court.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I have to give my hats off to the judges because they have a very hard job. I'm sure they're not very well liked in most cases. And then the defense attorneys for these people, not well liked either.
That's a very tough position because you want to maintain the integrity of the law, but you also live in a community that you want to maintain civility, safety. You know, we want everybody to have the best life we can have in Jonesboro. We want to be safe. We want our kids to be safe. We want schools to be safe. But we also have a law that applies that we want to maintain the integrity of that law because it ensures longevity. It ensures that things are going to be the same on a long-term basis, hopefully.
Okay. So imagine when they go back to court, and I'm going to do some more research and try to follow up and see, get more details on this story. But imagine when they go back to court, hopefully that the prosecutor has enough evidence to show that this person, Okay, I can't say that. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. What happens initially? The person, a bond is set for that person. Let's just say it's $20,000. And they may meet that by calling a bondsman and paying them some money. They get out of jail. Usually attached to that requirement is a no contact order that the person can't be around the family, so they won't cause any additional problems. But at the next hearing, if it were in Arkansas, there would be a motion day where you don't present evidence, but you present any motions.
Okay.
And then at the following hearing, there might be a trial or a plea date or something of that sort. But there are stages in the criminal process that allow for the next step to be taken. And the criminal process is the one in which the Constitution applies most strictly, in my opinion, because we have to make sure that an innocent person is not sent to jail. That's the very essence of the criminal process that we try to ensure, that no innocent person receives a guilty finding.
Alrighty, you're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We're speaking with Mr. Scott Willhite, local attorney, and today is Axie Attorney Day. So we're going to take a short break, but please do not go away. I promise you we have more questions, and I'm going to try to stay out of my feelings and get off my soapbox. So stay tuned, don't go away. KLEK 102.5 FM.
I guess I'll get on mine then. We'll be back. This is KLEK.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
What do you do when life becomes overwhelming? I'm Mark Merrill with today's Family Minute. You overslept. There's no hot water left in the shower. You can't find your other shoe. So when your child jumps into your lap and spills coffee down your shirt, it's the last straw. You snap. Unfortunately, our kids are sometimes the ones who are on the receiving end of our frustration when things overwhelm us. Here are some things to do when you're feeling overwhelmed. First, lean on your spouse. When you're feeling stretched to the limit, share it with your spouse. Together, you may be able to come up with a strategy to redistribute some tasks. Second, exercise. Releasing endorphins with physical activity is a great stress reliever. Remember, your family first.
For more resources on today's topic, go to markmerrill.com.
Family Minute is made possible by the Kappa Nu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a nonprofit organization committed to service to all mankind. Kappa Nu Omega Alpha Kappa Alpha on Facebook.
Blues live for 5 at Legends 1025. Only $5 admission. Saturday, December 17th, 8 o'clock p.m. Featuring from Dallas, Texas, Lerone Powers.
What's the name of that thing? Could only last night.
Lerone Powers.
And is the mother, but don't you get caught. You're gonna have to pay the cost.
Performing all of his hits.
Ain't nothing but a party. Jumping like a hole in the wall.
Lerone Powers. Don't miss it. Blues live for 5 at Legends 1025. Saturday, December 17th, 8 o'clock p.m. Only $5 admission. This event is a KLEK fundraiser.
Did you know KLEK has a brand new streaming app? That's right, you can listen to KLEK 102.5 FM anywhere in the world. The app is available for all Android phones and tablets, as well as iPhones and iPads. Just search your app store for KLEK and download the KLEK app for free today. And don't miss a beat of the education, entertainment, and empowerment on KLEK 102.5 FM.
New St. John Missionary Baptist Church, 308 North Main Street in Jonesboro, is under the direction of Reverend Ted T. Taylor Sr. Worship services are Sundays at 11 o'clock a.m., Sunday school is on Sundays at 9:30 a.m., prayer service is Wednesday nights at 6:30, and Bible class is on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock p.m. New St. John also has the Men of Standards Ministries, Outreach Ministry, Choir, Youth Ministry, Dance Ministry, and Missionary Society. www.ncsmi.org. www.newstjohn.org. New St. John Missionary Baptist Church on Facebook, 870-932-6915.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
And we're back on Community Conversations on KLEK. This is our Ask the Attorney Day with local attorney Scott Willhite. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. I know we're talking about general law things, but there are various ways in which the law affects you. And of course, that is why he comes in and volunteers his time once a month to talk to you, the listener. So if you have a question or a comment, phone number is 870-277-1080. Once again, the phone number is 870-277-1080. And Mr. Willhite will be happy to address the question the best way he knows how.
Okay, so I found another website, and like I said, I was going to try to stay off my soapbox and not get...
Is it pink?
Well, pink and sparkly.
It's got glitter on it.
Yeah, of course.
For those of you all that don't know, Quabila loves pink and glitter, so I'm sure her soapbox has pink glitter and a Hello Kitty sign on it somewhere.
You know it. No, I don't want to respect his personal feelings because he's a professional in the city, and so, you know.
Well, I'm sure he can respond to you in a respectful, professional way.
So anyway, we were discussing another case that was big in the news. You know, we're talking about how judges and lawyers and juries, they have such a responsibility when they're listening and trying a case and making a decision based on someone's life. You know, we have seen, you mentioned earlier about innocent people going to jail. We have seen now there's been an influx of people being released from prison after, say, 10, 18, 20 years, because back then either the prosecutor was so quick to seek a verdict, or some people were just so tired of the case they were just quick to make a decision, and all,
or even some bias on behalf of the prosecutor.
And we also have a great increase of technology to allow us to assess the evidence.
And, you know, and I do understand, you know, back in the 80s, let's just say the 80s, the technology, like you said, to test DNA, fingerprints, fibers, and things of that nature was non-existent at the time. So, okay, now that moving forward, now that we do have this access to technology, do you feel that some cases still move too fast when it comes to processing evidence because someone just in such a hurry to make $1 somewhere, or you know?
Well, I think rather than monetarily affected, I think some cases are affected more by the press, more by the pressure of a conviction. If it's a very sticky, you know, very public situation, I mean that may affect it. You know, the dockets, criminal dockets are very large. If you go and sit in criminal court one day, it's usually full, no matter where you go. And that's unfortunate. And, you know, handling a big docket like that, the prosecutors in Craighead County are extremely busy. Okay. And so there is a push, I'm sure, to handle cases as efficiently as you can. And I know they're doing the best job they can do, but there's a limited number of prosecutors and a huge number of cases they're dealing with. So it's problematic, to say the least.
Why do you think there are not enough lawyers in certain fields or in certain practices?
I think criminal cases are so emotional because they deal with someone's liberty. It's, you know, I have handled a number of criminal practice is not my primary practice. I primarily do workers' comp, personal injury, but criminal practice is something I do as a smaller part of my practice. But I have never seen a grown man show more emotion than when he is told he's going to prison. Mm-hmm. And, you know, tears running down his face. He's going to be without his family, you know, for a period of time. That's an emotional situation, and quite frankly, it's difficult to deal with. You know, we all have difficulties in our life, but the stress of going through that with someone is difficult. Just as if similar to a domestic case. Someone dealing with the limitation of how they can and when they can see their children, things of that sort. That's a very difficult issue too. So domestic practice and criminal practices, in my opinion, are the most emotionally draining areas of law.
Wow.
Or to put it another way, let's say that you are a victim and it goes to court and the offending party is found not guilty, and now you feeling those emotions that you feel you didn't get the justice for whatever reason that you felt you deserved. That could cause grown men and grown women to cry as well.
Absolutely. I mean, every aspect of a criminal proceeding is emotionally taxing. Every party, the judge, jury, the victim, witnesses, everybody involved is emotionally taxed.
Definitely. We are speaking with local attorney Scott Willhite. This is our Ask the Attorney segment. We do have a Facebook shout out. Shout out to David Nunez of the Arkansas Community United Community. I'm sorry, David. Forgive me. I don't have the organization, but shout out to you.
It's a community coalition for immigrants here in Arkansas.
Well, we definitely do appreciate you tuning in, David. Of course, David, if you have a question for Mr. Willhite, feel free to post it on the live stream since you are watching the video.
Alrighty. So let's talk about, I ran across another question concerning search warrants. And, or if someone files a complaint. I remember a case where a neighbor called a noise complaint on me, and I probably had my radio up too loud. I live in a place where my neighbors are right next door, so yeah, you can hear through the walls. So anyway, officers were like, this has been years and years ago, but the officers were like, was there anyone else here? There was reports of screaming. I'm like, no, just me. And they wanted to come in and check, closets and different things. So I let them come in, even though I told them no one else was there. So can you kind of explain, and maybe this might be a police question too, but...
Sure. The search warrant issue is a delicate issue. It's addressed by the Arkansas Rules of Criminal Procedure very specifically. The police have certain rights if they believe there's been a reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. It has to be a certain type of crime before they can search your residence. You have a right of privacy in certain locations, including your home, your vehicle. There's certain expectations you have of privacy with respect to those areas. So an officer cannot just come into your home without your consent. So the number one way an officer can obtain or search your premises is if you consent. If you say yes. You don't have to say yes. You can say no.
Okay.
At that stage, the officer may have to go to a judge and get what's called a search warrant. Has to present certain facts to the judge to say, here's what I think's going on at this residence or in this car or wherever the expectation of privacy may be. And the officer may obtain a search warrant and then come back. At that point, though, the evidence that he thinks is there may be gone. So sometimes there's a situation where they believe the evidence is going to be disposed of or it won't be maintained, and they may have to take action beyond what they want to. And it's a delicate issue though, because it's constitutionally protected. Your privacy is constitutionally protected in most circumstances.
Okay. I had another thought while you were talking. Nowadays, with the infamous camera phone, and our phones can do so much. Now there's people, they seem to record everything. If it looks like there's going to be an altercation, people whip out their phone, and usually you don't have to unlock your phone. It's a matter of swiping or whatever, and you get access.
Well, even if you unlock it takes like 5 seconds to go from that to turn the video camera on.
And so let's talk about the legal side of using recordings, say in court, to even obtain some type of charge against someone. A lot of the police don't like it, and we haven't asked this question to our chief yet, but we may have to ask him.
I think we definitely should. So make a note of that for the next interview with Chief Elliott.
Well, you're certainly right. It's readily available. Everyone, or most everyone, has a telephone with a camera, video capabilities, and so I think you can assume if you have a situation that's interesting, someone may record it. So then the question, as you sort of alluded to, is what happens if it's recorded and available for presentation in court? Is that...
Yes, is it valid? Is it, legitimate? Is it okay? Is it valid? I mean...
I think under most circumstances, a recording of an event is going to be admissible. I think that's the general rule.
But then it goes back to that whole interpretation of the situation, because just say the person didn't get the very beginning of the altercation. Well, by the time they started recording, the officer, because of however the person he's trying to arrest or whatever the situation is, because of their emotions, well, the officer's emotions are now heightened. Sure. So the situation is going to look different than what we perceive on the outside looking in. So
you're talking more of a context issue.
Okay.
Is the complete context made available to, let's just say a jury's hearing a case, it's a criminal case, bad circumstances happen, and there's a video of just a short segment of it. Mm-hmm. Is that a good representation of the entire event?
Yes.
And that's a good question, because we have evidence rules that would apply that says if evidence is more prejudicial than probative, meaning it's more harmful than it is good, should it be admissible? And that would be up to a judge as an evidentiary matter. Video could be excluded if it did not have enough context to give full meaning to the event.
Okay. Alrighty. I have another question. I don't know if this is kind of a legal question or maybe what can happen next. There was a video, a lady being irate in a Michael's store, and she accused the workers of being mean, disrespectful to her. But according to this video, which was over 8 minutes long, she's standing there cursing, just being totally irate. She's on the phone with the police, 911, whoever. Anyway, so let's say this issue goes to court. Okay, one, can she be arrested? Can she be arrested even though she filed the initial complaint? Can she be arrested for then causing a disturbance within the store?
I think absolutely. I mean, typically the arrest might take place. For instance, the worker could file an affidavit saying this person did these various things, and that was harassment or that was assault or whatever the situation may result in. Yes.
Okay, so once it goes to court, I don't know without having all the details, and I hope you can. I know it's kind of hard for you to answer directly, but okay, once they do go to court, this lady says, well, they disrespected me, they did this, and she's still irate. Of course she can't curse in the courtroom, but she was on the video, she was cussing. Not curse, she was cussing.
That's a difference, isn't it? We know where the line is.
So, I mean...
And there's a lot of activity that is protected by our First Amendment free speech rights that allow us to do things in public as long as they don't cross the line.
Oh my goodness.
We can't be disorderly. We can't have disorderly conduct. And that's one of those issues we talked about earlier. That's not a bright line test. It's not cussing versus cursing. It's how bad you're acting in addition to your language. But we can do a lot of things in public. We can protest. We can do all kinds of things that are protected. The question is, have we crossed the line as far as a criminal statute?
Oh my goodness.
And so maybe the person has, or maybe they haven't.
And there was an example of this in town. I won't go into specifics, but I'll just say that there was, in a part of town, there was a sign locally that had something on the sign that could potentially be considered hate speech by a particular group. And, people were notified about it, and even the police were notified and investigated. But without kind of giving away the details, at what point does that person's free speech and right to put up a sign in their yard that may have certain statements that may be considered inflammatory by another group turn into something that a group may find to be harassment or threatening against them? Where does that line kick in at?
Uncle Leganzi, that's a great question, because that line changes with time. When I was in law school, Our debates were where the speech promoted violence. Okay, because we were in the era where flag burning was just a theory. Now it's
real.
common practice. We were talking about should it be legal to burn a flag, and sort of our discussion centered around when it becomes speech that promotes violence. It's probably not protected by the First Amendment. Okay, now we've drawn the line differently. In 2016, and so where that line is drawn, I don't know, but we don't want anybody's, closely held convictions to be attacked. I'm a Christian, and I believe I have a right to those beliefs. Someone else has a different religious or different social belief. They may certainly have a different opinion in me, and they have the right to have their opinion, and I have the right to have my opinion. Now, if my opinion inflicts danger or violence towards you, then I probably don't have the right to express that as vocally. But we each have our constitutional rights to our closely held, firmly held beliefs, and so that's a great question, because it's attacked in the United States right now as to what we can believe.
And I have another question to follow up with that. We have seen a lot of this. Not even this year, even last year, several years leading up to now, people have made what has been considered racist or homophobic comments on social media, and people get wind of it, take it to their employer. They in turn lose their job, and then so the employer releases this. Some of them are generic statements. We at such and such agency, company, this does not reflect the whole generic statement. Right. So, okay, I know this is still, again, a sticky situation, a tough one to really, it's a case-by-case basis. Does the fired employee have a right to file a suit against their employer for being wrongfully discharged because someone else felt their statement was offensive?
Well, it would boil down to that person, the terminated employee's actions or statements, and the question is, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is who has jurisdiction over that issue.
Okay.
For instance, if your employer demotes or terminates you for something that you feel is a discriminatory practice, and that's one of those common law issues of what's a discriminatory practice. Well, it sort of evolves over time, but if you feel that you've been discriminated against and you've been demoted or terminated as a result of something you've done or said that could be protected under our Constitution, then you submit it to the EEOC. They investigate it, and that's an issue that I get lots of calls on. I bet in a week I'll get 2 or 3 calls a week on that very issue. If I've been demoted or I've been terminated, and here's what happened at work, and it's a very delicate issue because there is some clearly protected actions and speech that we can take that should not result in any sort of negative job actions.
A lot of it is, you're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We're speaking with Mr. Scott Willhite, and today is Ask the Attorney Day. If you have any questions, please give us a call at 870-277-1080. 870-277-1080. Okay, and I know this is a very touchy subject. I may get some backlash. I'm not giving my personal opinion. I'm just asking a question because I've seen it. Not that I'm on Facebook a whole lot, but if you scroll up enough, you will see various hot topics, and this has been one. Recently there was a story that's very recent. Lady was kicked out of Victoria's Secrets because she was discriminated against, or she felt she was, because of another lady, same race, was actually shoplifting. The store manager took it upon herself just to kick everybody out. So, it's one of those cases. So now the employee has been fired from Victoria's Secrets, and the company released a statement, and so it's like, okay, here we go. Here's another situation. It's just, it's tough. So it's like people feel like I have the right to say what I want. I have the right to feel the way I feel. In other cases, people have gone to social media to say how they feel about certain races of people or certain people's sexuality. I'll put it like that. They feel like I have the right to say what I want. I'm not inciting a riot. I'm not causing an uproar. This is my personal feelings. But yes, I do work for a public office company, say a school district. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep it calm. I'm trying to keep it calm.
Well, gather your thoughts together and we'll come back on the other side of the break and we will bring it up from there. We're speaking with local attorney Scott Willhite. This is Community Conversations. This is KLEK 102.5 FM.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
We're back with Money Matters. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. Today, we're talking about the financial codependent. If this is you, you are clueless about your finances. If there is a budget, someone else, a parent, a sibling, a romantic partner, or spouse, handles everything, including paying bills. Financial codependents often go well into adulthood without ever paying their own bills, or even having a realistic perception of the cost of living. The dangers here are obvious. 1. Being dependent on others leaves one open to being controlled and even neglected and abused by others. Worse, codependents are often devastated when hit with divorce, death, or other circumstances that takes away the person they blindly depended on. If this is you, it's time to grow up and take control of your finances. Balance your own checkbook, get credit in your own name, and pay your own bills. Plan your own financial future. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. for Money Matters, a product of American Urban Radio Networks.
Money Matters is made possible by the Jonesboro Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to uncompromising commitment to communities, service, leadership, empowerment. www.jonesboroalumnidst.org.
Support for KLEK is brought to you by
Tax Time is here at Car Today, the original buy here, pay here dealer. New Car Today General Manager Sean Corns.
With new inventory available daily, whatever you're looking for, we've got it.
Located on Stadium Boulevard just south of the 63 bypass, Tax Time is the time to drive at Car Today. Car Today.
Experience the joy with Bishop Adrian R. Rogers of Fullness of Joy Church, 3307 Ray Street, Jonesboro, Arkansas, 72401.
From the KLEK Community Calendar. The Jonesboro Fire Department will offer free smoke detectors. The City of Jonesboro acquired grant funding to provide smoke detectors to any home. The detector must be installed by Jonesboro Fire Department firefighters. More information on getting a smoke detector installed in your home is available at 870-932-2428. 870-932-2428.
KLEK 102.5 FM wants to be active in the community. If you or your organization is hosting a community service event, we would like to know about it and be a part of it. KLEK will promote your event on air, online, and on social media. KLEK personalities may also attend the event and provide music and or entertainment. Certain restrictions and availability may apply. If you or your organization would like to partner with KLEK to make the Jonesboro community a better place, call 870-277-1080 or email us at klek@klekfm.org. In order for a community announcement or church announcement to be aired on KLEK 102.5 FM, we ask that the announcement be sent at minimum 1 week in advance. Thank you for supporting KLEK 102.5 FM.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
And we're back on Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5. This is Ask the Attorney Day with local attorney Scott Willhite. Phone lines are still open at 870-277-1080. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page. Let me look on here to see if we have any more Facebook shout outs. Want to make sure that we shout out everybody who is checking in. It looks like we do have a comment, so let's see We have, David Nunez does have a question. Who determines sentencing, and how can it be changed if it be too harsh for some cases and not for others, and statute limitations? Thanks.
Good question, David. It depends on the charge, and charges can be local. For instance, they can be a municipal ordinance. Charges can be from a county ordinance. They can be from a state statute. So they come from various sources, but some legislative body sets the sentencing typically. There are minimum sentences for instance, a speeding ticket may result in a minimum fine. There are certain charges that have a minimum jail time applicable. Some statutes allow a judge or a jury to have discretion as to sentencing. So most of those are going to be statutory, where you need to contact your legislature, whether it be House of Representatives or Senator for Arkansas, and those change very little. Those are set in stone most of the time, don't change a lot. There are sentencing commissions that review and have minimum guidelines or guidelines for sentencing. So they spend, the state of Arkansas spends lots of time analyzing the crimes and what sentencing should be applicable for various crimes.
Okay, now he also mentioned, like, what if they feel that it was too harsh? I mean, I guess that's where the appeals process could come in.
Sure, the appeals process, you can, for instance, if you go to circuit court and you get a harsh sentence, you can appeal that to the Court of Appeals. That's a very difficult situation because once a judge or jury comes down with a sentence, it's very difficult to overturn that.
Well, hopefully David Scott answered the question. Thank you for any other post on live feed, or you can call us at 870-277-1080. Once again, that's 870-277-1080, or post on our Facebook live feed.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one last question. I'm going to stay away from the racial issues because that can be all day, every day, and to get too sticky and heated. So anyway, I do want to say, if anyone has any questions concerning if they feel like they've been done wrong, like Mr. Scott says, contact the EOCC.
Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Yes, and they will give you directions on how to handle those cases if you feel like you've been wrongly terminated from a job, or you feel just things are just not going right at a particular job. Okay, next question. I have a friend she doesn't have legal custody of her children, and her husband divorced. He has legal custody, but he's not providing for them. What can she do to try to get custody back? Even say he's willing to, give her custody, but the lawyers that handled the case before, because one represented the other, like, it's kind of a sticky situation. The one that represented him, of course, can't represent her.
Right, and it may be a situation they have to sort of cut ties and move forward to other attorneys, but your friend could file a petition for change of custody, and if it's not contested, if there's no opposition by the dad, they might be able to do that by consent, where it wouldn't be very expensive. Most lawyers can contact the other party. For instance, she could hire an attorney. That attorney could contact the dad and ask, either by letter or by telephone, would he consent to sign an order saying she gets custody and other terms. And if he did sign the order, they could transfer custody. It would need to be signed by a judge, approved, by the court. But that could take place by consent, so it wouldn't actually have to go to a hearing, since there would be an agreement.
Okay. Alrighty. So, are there any other things that we haven't covered you feel that maybe people should know? Oh, I'm sorry. We talked about, becoming a lawyer in different states and how different states have different rules and laws and whatnot, and so your license doesn't necessarily carry over. So, what advice would you give someone who's deciding they want to go into a career in law?
If they want a career in law, I'd say they either go to law school in the state they want to practice, or they would have to take the bar exam and study for the bar exam in the state they want to practice in.
Okay, so they need to make sure that I want to live in XYZ state.
If possible.
For
if possible, yes.
X amount of years. so that the license would be valid.
Correct.
Okay. And then what about reciprocity? We talked about that a little bit, how it would allow you to practice it from one state to another with some type of written consent or something.
Right. Now we have available where I can practice in another state from time to time for a case or two, for specific cases.
Okay.
But generally, if I want to practice in another state, I have to apply to that state for acceptance. And it might be by the Supreme Court of that state or by some sort of examining body. I'm licensed in Tennessee and Arkansas because I took the bar exam in both of those states.
Okay.
But if I wanted to practice in Mississippi or like Kentucky or another state, I would have to apply to their organization and ask, can I be accepted?
Okay.
And there's different processes for different states.
All right. So, Mr. Scott, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and answering the questions. I'm sorry if I got a little sideways, went left field.
I appreciate you guys having me, and hope you guys have a great holiday season, a great Christmas.
Yes, sir. So
and definitely Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to yourself, your wife, your children, and your entire family, and all of those that are close to you. And that goes not just for Mr. Scott Willhite, that goes for all of our listeners of KLEK 102.5 FM. We hope that each and every one of you that are listening, that are on our live stream, on our app, no matter where you may hear our voices from, we definitely appreciate each and every one of you. May God bless each and every one of you, and may you have a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, no matter what holiday you celebrate, or even if you don't celebrate a holiday at all. We still hope that you have a good, because no matter what you believe in, everybody deserves to have a great day. I'm gonna get up off this microphone. You all have a good one. Be blessed. This is KLEK 102.5 FM.